Before I introduce our three panelists today who know far more about this topic than I do, I tell people I know enough about this topic to be dangerous, but not necessarily an expert. I did want to also acknowledge Norm DeWeaver. Raise your hand, Norm. If you don't know Norm, please get to know him. He knows probably more about this than anyone alive, and was very generous with his time, contributing his knowledge, his expertise, his feedback on various drafts, to make sure that we got not just where Indian country is today when it comes to workforce development correct, but we got the history of it correct. We've got the journey that tribal nations have been on when it comes to this critically important challenge of building your human capacity accurate. Get that down right. In your agendas on the second page, we have bios listed for our three panelists, so I'm just going to introduce them by name and position title. First, we have Kim Carroll, who's a Grants and Compliance Director with Career Services at the Cherokee Nation. We have Erwin Palmami Jr., who is the Employment and Training Administration Director with the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes. And then we have K7, who's the Director of Adult Education with the Nez Perce tribe. And I really wanted to thank them for being here today. Kay was telling me before we started that she had a bit of an odyssey getting here. She went to St. Louis by accident instead of Kansas City. We got our wires crossed there somehow. I'll have to make it up to her. But what we wanted to do was start with them giving their general perspectives about workforce development and how their nations are approaching that task of developing their human capacity to create the sort of community, to create the sort of future that they want to see for their nations and for their communities. And then after that, I'm going to take you guys very briefly through what is contained in the toolkit. I see a lot of folks already leafing through it, so feel free to continue to do that as you listen. But I'll take you through some of how it's structured and some of how we see tribes using it. And then we're going to actually turn it around and let you guys test it out. We're going to break you up into small groups of 5, and we're going to have you spend a little bit of time going through one of the 15 strategic considerations that are contained in the toolkit, and then share back out with the larger group. So with that, we're going to start off with 10-minute opening remarks from each of the panelists, and they're going to, like I said, talk about just in general broad brush strokes what their nations are doing when it comes to workforce development. So we'll start with Kim. So give her the mic.
Thank you. My name's Kim Carroll, and I've been employed with the Cherokee Nation for just over 30 years now. I started out at Cherokee Nation on work experience under the old JTPA program. As maybe some of you have had that experience as well. Has anyone in here actually been on a program? JTPA, CETA, right? Okay. I remember CETA. I actually had a training through CETA several years ago. We won't go there, though. Yeah. At Cherokee Nation, in 2002, we developed our first Public Law 102-477 plan. We had a new administration. There were a lot of changes going on. One of the things that we did was we combined all of the various employment and training programs that were scattered throughout the tribe into one new department called Career Services. This included our resident services that was with our housing authority. It included our, at that time, Workforce Investment Act programs that were under Human Services. It included adult education that was with our education department. It included vocational rehabilitation that was in our health department. And we combined all of those to create Career Services. Some of the other programs that we operate through Career Services include the Talking Leaves Job Corps Center, which we have under contract with the Department of Labor. We also have our Tribal Employment Rights Office. We also have a newer reentry program. And this is in addition to the BIA programs that we operate as well, the Job Placement and Training Program, We still do the adult vocational training and the direct employment, direct placement, on-the-job training, work experience, adult ed, summer youth, all of those programs that you're probably very familiar with. But one of the things that we did when we first were starting this program was we took a look at all the programs that we had in the department, and we tried to find the similarities. We came up with a common form of intake, application, and referral, basically. As I said, we had just started a 102477 plan, but the only employment training programs that we had in it at that time were the Workforce Investment Act and the Child Development Block Grant. And Child Development did stay in another department, but because of referrals back and forth, we've always been able to work very well together. The other programs in the department, we operated as if they were in 477, even though they weren't. I think one of the most important things that we've done at Cherokee Nation is to cross-train our staff. They may actually be employed by one program, but they know the other programs. Through our centralized intake process, someone can walk in the door, not know what program they want or even what service they want, and we can begin the application process by utilizing a 2-page form that asks basic demographic information, basic eligibility information for all the different programs we operate. And utilizing that form, we can then track the individuals into a proper placement for them, depending on their circumstances. I think that this has been very helpful. For one thing, one of our staff who maybe works primarily with vocational training, if they have someone who is ready to go to work, they use the same intake form. That's still the beginning of our application process. So they can do that, and vice versa. Someone who is used to working with employers and finding people job placements, don't really know that much about vocational training, can begin the process with the 2-page intake. Through the cross-training, there are several things that go into that. We do continuous training for our staff, and we were fortunate enough just a couple of years ago, we expanded our 477 program to include adult education and to include our job placement and training program through BIA. And at that time, we received a very small grant, $20,000. And so we utilized that, and the purpose of that was to assist us in expanding our 477. So what we did with that was we made a video. We made a training video. And in this video, we discussed the history of 477 and the makeup of Cherokee Nation's 477. We talked about the different components that are included in 477. I don't want to call them programs. They're activities or components. We also did some success stories of some of our participants. And the interesting thing about the participant stories is they never once say 477. They don't say classroom training. They don't say work experience. They don't say adult ed. They talk about things like that Surge Tech program, or helped me get my unarmed security license, those types of things. They talk about the service they received and not the program that they were on. And that's wonderful. That's great. That's what we want, actually. And then the third part of the video, we talked about the future. We knew at that time that we were waiting for just any day now for the new legislation to be passed that would make 477 permanent and would expand the programs that were eligible to be included. So we use this video now for continuous training. Certainly for new staff that come on, I think it's important that people understand the history, where it all came from, how it all started. And I think that it's important that they know that these things don't just happen, that someone makes them happen. My hope is that some of the younger folks out there will step up and take over that role for us. And I think also that one of the things that has assisted us in sustaining the programs that we receive has been the support of our tribal administration and tribal council. We've been very, very fortunate to have been able to receive tribal funds for several programs. You know, I don't know how many of you have a summer youth program. Funding is limited, of course. Our tribe has dedicated funds for a tribal summer program for youth. It doubles the amount of people that we're able to serve. They've also invested in vocational training. They were investing in higher education, and we said, wait a minute, vocational training is very important as well, and they agreed. They have also invested in our reentry program. We have a new coming home reentry reintegration program. It is completely tribally funded at this point. In addition to that, they have invested funding for economic development, tribal economic development. And we work very closely with economic development agencies throughout our area. We're located in 14 counties in northeastern Oklahoma. There are 2 major economic development entities there. We're the first people they call. We're the first people the state calls when they have a new business coming in to our area of the state, because we have a lot to bring to the table. And economic development is a big part of the services that we provide in career services.
Good afternoon. My name is Erwin Pamami Jr. Like Kim mentioned earlier, I was a product of the Job Placement and Training program with JTPA. Back in 1995, I was on the Summer Youth Program, and I worked for our Indian Health Service in El Reno as a maintenance person for the months of June through July. During that time, my supervisor, who of course was the maintenance man there, taught me various things, but the most thing he taught me about was that no matter what you do a great job at it, because people are depending on you. And even wiping things down, people don't want to come in there and get sick, he'd say. So make sure you do the best job at what you're doing. And so that's what I've always held in my heart in anything I do, knowing that my best will be different from when I wake up in the morning to when I go to bed at night. So always do your best. And just the thoughts of working for the people or the tribe, I've been there 17 years. It'll be 18 years on the 26th of this month. June 26th of 2000 was when I was hired. I was a file clerk, there again, worked my way up. I'm now the director for the Employment and Training Administration, which encompasses our Workforce Investment Act, the Job Placement and Training with BIA, and the HHS Native Employment Works Program, as well as the EEOC's TARA, which is Tribal Employment Rights. We are looking forward to considering the process of becoming 477, because right now I'm handling all of those programs individually, which means separate reporting, which means, a lot of administrative burden on my part when I could actually be doing other things, helping the people. So I'm definitely wanting to pursue that opportunity here soon. Again, the program, I'm very thankful for it, just on the fact that, it takes a special type of person to do these type of programs. It's not just for everybody, and a lot of people come into not knowing that, but then once they really realize the benefit and as well as the outcome, helping people help themselves is a wonderful feeling, and to see somebody achieve what they set their mind to, planned it out, and got what they wanted out of life, and then they know that, this is within reach, I can do this. They get that self-esteem, they have that heart, they feel that, just so much better that there's an outlet. There's not just getting by. The getting by, I know there's some people out there they're experts at that, and that's it, but you're never going to have a good quality life if you don't pursue your education, as well as maintain and understand, what those relationships mean with your coworkers. People are depending on you again, and to do your job, as well as just getting the self-worth out of it, doing a good job, not just enough to get by again. Do a great job at what you can do. I also work with these two ladies here. Sorry, 1, 2, 3. Kind of real quick there. We all work with the National Employment and Training Administration's conference. There's a national conference and a regional conferences. I believe Kay sits on the Western region, and I'm on the Midwest and Eastern region. And me and Kim sit on the advisory council for the the Division of Indian Native American Programs. So we're, at ground level at times, working with our caseworkers, working with the people that help the people come in every day, and understand the thought that, some people come in with the thought of, do I use this $20 in my pocket to put gas in my car to get to work, or do I use that to pay for food for my children this evening? And, we have a lot to bear when it comes to that. And myself, I know it's really challenging to hear these stories and to understand that going home at night, I myself have met a client at Walmart and said, don't tell nobody about this, okay? Because I'm not doing this for everybody. But I could see that you really wanted to, you really needed that help. You really wanted to strive and get to your job and stuff. So, hey, this is a Walmart card. Do what you need to do tonight and, put that gas money in that car or use that as gas money, whichever. Now, I love working for the tribes. Like I said, I've worked there for going on 18 years now. And starting up as actually it was community service is what it was. And it was a little bit longer program they had designed then, because I worked for a whole year and didn't even know I wasn't even an employee. That's when we actually had money back then. Now we've been stripped so much with our money. I wish it'd be great if we could offer opportunities like this. I got such a better understanding of what it meant to work, from being there on time, for actually dressing appropriately, as well as people taking time to invest in me on how to answer the phone adequately. Make sure you identify yourself. When you're making a phone call for someone, tell them the purpose of the call. I see this so much in our youth now that that's a challenge to them. I get a phone call and they're like, I'm just checking on my app. Hello, who are you? They don't even know the self-recognition of the thought of, I need to have great communication skills to make it in this world, because I don't know about emojis and all this other stuff, but that's not going to get it. Or the emails that are, nativecutie@78@yahoo.com is not going to get it either. But, we got to address these things. And I feel that I operate a youth program, and that's part of our curriculum, and is providing that insight, letting them know that we have to change. What's the norm right now is not always the norm in the business world. You're not going to advance if you look like you're very naive or you just can't communicate well. With that thought, within the packet here, within the toolkit, I looked over what I was going to talk about was the advancement part of the toolkit. And in the toolkit, it talks about career ladders within the tribe. That's what I felt like I've achieved through my success in my life, is starting out as a file clerk, working through becoming a case manager, an administrative assistant, bookkeeping assistant, and all the various departments of the tribe. So I got a real, rounded view of what it means to operate programs on the thoughts of understanding the financial management, the reporting requirements, as well as, the human nature of just interacting with people. And that's why I left the Treasury at one point, because I really didn't care for what I did there. I did a great job at being an accountant, but I didn't have the heart. I didn't go home every day feeling fulfilled. And so I knew I had to do something later, and when the opportunity presented itself, I became acting director for the workforce program, or WIA, and when I got back, I felt at home. I got to see some of my friends at the conferences I hadn't seen in years, and I felt like this is where I want to really be. I want to be here to help people, as well as, offer this opportunity for, people that have had very little, to understand that, this can be a possibility. And within the assessment, it talks about the expectations and standards of the organization. On that thought, with my tribe, it's very different. Some people are, I want to say lifers, but they call them that, or even one was called an ancient. But the thought is that, they've worked there forever, but they've never advanced. And that's what I wanted to see within this toolkit. It talked about advancing people on the thoughts of merit with increased education, And being at the advisory council meeting earlier last month, there was a gentleman there that provided an opportunity, or actually a tool called Skills Common, and it has curriculum as well as for college and even technical schools for individuals who, we can kind of design an apprenticeship program, and that's what I'd like to see within my tribes. I want to try to develop this for us. We don't have anything currently like this right now, but I can only imagine the thought of having a good person that works in maintenance and even outside ground maintenance, becoming landscaping, as well as the thought of getting through the even just the internals of the tribe. We want to host a week-long orientation where one day they just go over our policies, then the next day our operations policies, and then maybe the third day do something fun. Go out and tour our campus, see our buffalo herd, see some of our historical sites and our ceremonial areas. And then so people get a real big understanding of our culture, of our people, what it means to be Cheyenne Arapaho. And then on the last day, actually sit down with the supervisor, whoever that may be, and go over everything in very much detail, the thought, even just developing an outline, so that when they get in there, they have a better understanding of what's expected of them, as well as who the people are, who they're going to be working for. And with that thought, like I said, this tool here, it also talks about diffusing the crabs in the bucket. I feel that if people have a more quality of understanding of their tasks, their work, what they're expected of, then they won't have to feel that, drawing that negativity if they feel positive about coming to work every day and wanting to be there. And that's what I want to make happen with my people. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
All right, good afternoon. My name is K7, and I'm with the Nez Perce tribe. We're located in Idaho. At the Nez Perce tribe, I serve in our tribal education department. I am the director of our adult education program, or is known as our Public Law 102477 program. I've been with the Nez Perce tribe for a lot of years. I just celebrated my 35th anniversary last August, and I have 36 years coming up in August. And I always say at the Nez Perce tribe, I think I'm one of the few employees at the tribe that has stayed in the same programming over the years. I've not moved out when I've had opportunity to move with other programs. And back in the day, in 1979, the Nez Perce tribe created the Employment and Training Department. And I worked under a great lady who I knew as a Carroll cheerleader. She came from the Native American Rights Fund and moved back home and started our Tribal Employment Rights Office and started going after money with the Department of Labor under CETA. And so I was fortunate to work under a great lady with vision for what workforce development should look like at the tribal level. She purposely arranged for our programs to be co-located under the Tribal Employment Rights Office. We had our BIA money with, back then it was, remember AVT, what was that, Adult Vocational Training, now known as Job Training and Placement. We provided oversight to the Adult Education Program. She worked with Department of Health and Human Services and brought in Native Employment Works. So we've been, in a sense, had co-located programs from like 1982 until 2000. And back in 1998, the Nez Perce tribe decided that education was a priority. We need to have a plan for it. And so we started at that time too. We were looking at how is it that we can look at 477. I mean, I think a lot of tribes ask themselves, how can we do this for many years and not do it? We've been looking at it since 1992, and in 1999, our social services director came to our tribal council table and informed them that with the TANF money, they would have to, there was no carryover, and we would need to return $200,000 to HHS. Our tribal council freaked out and says, we're not giving any federal agency money back. We need to take this money under 477. And so, they had meetings at the, the manager's level, tribal council level. How do we do this? And finally someone said, let's call Kay, because I think Kay would know what to do. So I come in and I worked the 4th of July weekend, and I wrote our first 477 plan. But it was interesting. They said, whatever you do with your plan, keep TANF separate. Don't integrate TANF with the rest of the monies that you want to do. And that was interesting because in our world under 477, you try to keep things truly blended, truly integrated without separating a program from the rest. But this is what they wanted, and so I worked on it over a weekend. The next week, I presented to them, and by then HHS decided to change their mind and said they allowed carryover. So the tribe says, well, you guys go ahead and do what you want with your money. We'll take ours back over here. So we've been doing 477 since the year 2000. And one thing that I've always thought would be really good is by then we had been involved in distance education. Distance education with our local college, Lewis Clark State College. We knew that Northwest Indian College, a tribal college, wanted to provide distance education on the Nez Perce Reservation. So in our plan, because it was now commingled, blended, integrated, we could truly make it a tribal plan and express a tribal need. So we started a tribal college. We entered into this partnership with Northwest Indian College. So that, I thought that was really nice that we did that at that time. And then in 1998, the tribe decided to form an education department. We've not had an education department until that time. And from 1998 until 2009, it was our Head Start director that served as our department manager. No tribal funds provided. She was truly working off the dollars of HHS, but serving in the capacity of our department manager. When in 2008, our tribe says, no, we need to begin funding an education department manager with tribal money, supporting that position. So that's when we became an improved education department. And our department manager has a real nice vision, because since 2011, we've been using Charles Dayton. Don't know if you use Charles Dayton as a consultant for strategic planning and development, leadership. We have a really nice strategic plan that we've been operating on since then that provides our 4 strategic directions. We work with our babies, from 0 to about 5 years old. Then we have another strategic direction that addresses our K through 12 education, then our post-secondary education. So in our K through 12 sector, our education department was one of the first tribes that was a recipient of the State Tribal Education Partnership for the state to administer one of those grants. And it was fun watching my supervisor just on a whim to say, I think I'm gonna write this. I'm gonna try to include the Coeur d'Alene tribe, the Shoshone-Bannock tribe, the Kootenays, the other Idaho tribes, but because the writing was sudden and happened during the summer when schools are out, no tribes were able to join. So here we are with a STEP project that's really built cultural relevance in curriculum development with 2 participating high schools on our reservation. We also have an ANA mentoring project. In our adult education program, we say we provide a menu of education, employment, and training services that include a lot of different activities that we provide. We provide ABE, GED. We provide partnerships with youth programs throughout the year. We do like an annual job shadow day on Groundhog's Day. I think we're the first tribe to sign up with the Take Our Daughters and Sons to Work Day, traditionally held every year on April 27th. So we do that annually. We do a lot of different activities and within our department. When we talk about the U.S. Department of Labor, Erwin was talking about how we view ourselves as active in our leadership within our region and across the country. We all do that very well. You know, Kim and Erwin with the U.S. Department of Labor's Federal Advisory Committee on Indian Employment and Training Programs. I've also been at that table before. Erwin and I currently serve with the Executive Committee with our National Indian Employment and Training Network. Erwin serves as our co-chairman. And what's interesting about our national network is we make sure that we represent grantees who are, we call standalone programs. They just administer the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act as a standalone program like Erwin's tribe. Our tribe has our WIOA monies blended in our 477 program. So in our chairman leadership, we have a tribe, make sure that someone's from an organization that's a 477 tribe. The other person is from a tribe that is a standalone tribe that administers their Department of Labor money alone. And so Erwin's the co-chair of our Section 166 programs of our national group. I serve as the chairman of our group. We have Lorenda Sanchez with California Indian Manpower. We have Margaret Zintek with Citizen Potawatomi. These are names that you'll want to know if you don't know already in terms of what we do with Indian employment and training, with tribal workforce development. But with Department of Labor, I remember in 2002 hearing this Department of Labor official stand at our national conference. And he says, I want you, does anybody here know what the power of E3 means? And we're an Indian community sitting in the audience like, no. But it was real interesting because he said the power of E3 is education, employment, and economic development. I heard Kim talk about how economic development is real key to what you do with tribal workforce development. And I'm in a region in north central Idaho that works with our local economic development agency. Our executive director has a passion for education. So it's been really good working with her strategically, regionally, bioregionally, because we're working over into Washington state as well to address the occupations in hot demand. We are working on strategies in manufacturing, health sciences. We're just now starting in hospitality. But at the local tribal level, we're addressing natural resources, employment, and in our hospitality with our tribal casino. Also, where the Nez Perce tribe is part of the American Job Center Network, one of those things under the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. But I think, being a tribe and being involved, engaged inside the tribe and outside the tribe is our key to workforce development. So thank you.
Thank you, all three of you, for your opening remarks. I'm always struck by this, and I don't pretend that this would be a hard and fast rule, but I'm struck by the tribes that I see in this area being sort of breakaway, being particularly innovative. There's people at the helm of these efforts that have been in place for quite a long period of time, and I think it argues strongly for tribal leadership in particular, for really valuing and cultivating that expertise and that institutional knowledge, that institutional know-how at the senior management level, to really figure out ways to keep those people, keep them engaged, keep them employed. Don't make sure that they're not subject to a new administration coming in and cleaning house, which I know some of you may have either personally experienced or have encountered somewhere else before. And then I think I wanted to just hit on quickly on a theme that Erwin brought up, and I think you see it in all of their remarks, and the passion that they bring to this conversation is the incredible dedication to do this kind of work. As Erwin said, it's incredibly rewarding, but it also can be incredibly difficult because you're trying to help people help themselves, and by being innovative and making sure that tribes are the ones calling the shots, not the federal government dictating to tribes how to do a certain program, but tribes actually figuring it out for themselves. They tend to do a lot more effective job helping people help themselves. But you don't get absolutely everybody, right? And so you need you need staff that are really committed to going the extra mile, staff that are willing to work the extra hours, staff that are not content with doing the same thing over and over again, even though it's not effective, and trying to figure out a better way. And these are some of the themes that the toolkit picks up on. And I wanted to take a few minutes and go through the toolkit, kind of walk you through how we structured this, why we structured it the way we did, and how you can begin to use it as you go back home. So all of you have a copy. If not, raise your hand, and Taisha can provide you one. And as I mentioned at the outset, if you haven't signed the sign-in sheet, please do. But I wanted to give you a bit of background about how this toolkit came to be. So as I mentioned at the outset, when I came on board with NCAI, we had this grant in place from the Northwest Area Foundation to look at tribal innovation and workforce development. But they very nicely left it up to us to figure out how do we pursue that learning, and how do we get that learning back out to Indian country. And so what we decided to do was first we developed a federal policy brief, and I'll give you a little more information about how to get your hands on that later. But basically what the federal policy brief did was it gave a set of very clear instructions to the federal government to say, based upon our understanding of workforce development and what works in workforce development in Indian country, this is your role. Your role is not to dictate to tribes about how to do workforce development. Your job is to support tribes as they innovate in order to figure out the solution that works best for them. And what works best at Nez Perce may not necessarily be what works best for Cherokee, based upon their own particular circumstances, their own people, where they're at, what they need to grow. And so that was the first major release. The next was a set of 4 in-depth case studies, which are tied into the toolkit. And then we said, we've spent these last 3+ years learning an immense amount about what tribes are doing across the country in this area. How do we distill it all into a useful resource that tribal leaders, tribal workforce development practitioners can apply in the course of their work, in the course of making strategic, informed decisions about how to build their human capacity? And so that gave birth to this toolkit. As I mentioned, and as you see in leafing through that, we have 15 key strategic considerations in the toolkit. And this came from some really, deep immersion and going through all of the relationships we built with tribes across the country, attending these conferences, having breakout sessions at our previous conferences, hearing what tribal leaders, tribal workforce development practitioners had to say about what's working, what they had to say about what they were doing. And we really distilled it all and said, these are the 15 sort of major buckets, 15 major focus areas that tribal leaders, tribal decision makers need to attend to if they want to be strategic about workforce development. If they want to develop an approach that is truly their own, that is truly Nez Perce, that is truly Cheyenne and Arapaho, that is truly Jamestown, S'Klallam, whatever the tribe is, that is truly their own, that answers to their particular priorities, their particular circumstances, these are the 15 key areas. And so, as I mentioned, they're all structured the same way. And so, if you just want to open up your toolkits and look at one of these 15 considerations, I'll walk you through how they work. For each one, there's 4 major components. The first is called framing the discussion. This is designed to sort of frame folks' mindset as they engage this particular aspect of workforce development, right? So what is the lay of the land when it comes to this issue? What are we really talking about here, right? So when we say citizen engagement, what are we really talking about? So for instance, do your tribal citizens really understand all of the services that are available to them when it comes to helping them prepare for a career, find a job, keep a job, right? Advance in a job, advance to the next level of a job. Do they really understand everything that's available? Do they know where to go? Do they know why the program's structured the way it is, right? Do they understand why the tribal government has decided to invest a certain amount of dollars in a particular area of workforce development? Why are they doing this, right? So you have to make sure that your citizens understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you're trying to help them, right? So that's just one example, and that's what that framing the discussion tries to do for each of these considerations. The next are questions to consider. These are really strategy informing questions, so they're designed to probe your thoughts, your ideas, really focused around solutions, right? Really getting you to take a hard look of where you're at right now in workforce development as it relates to this particular aspect. Partnerships, for instance. Do we have, all the partnerships we need to really create the workforce development approach that we want for our people? That's capable of getting our people where we want to get them to. Do we have a good working relationship with our native CDFI if we're a tribal government, if we have one in the community? Do we have a good working relationship with the tribal college? Does that college understand what our workforce development priorities are, right? So these probing questions are designed to get tribal decision makers thinking sort of beyond the right now, beyond the immediate urgency of how do we run this program from today to tomorrow. It's really more big picture. Third is the innovation snapshots. That's the top right of the 2-page spread. These are 2 what we consider leading examples. 2 tribes that are native organizations that are doing particularly innovative work as it relates to this specific aspect of workforce development. So for example, Kay mentioned the MOA that they have with Northwest Indian College. So if you turn to I think it's pages 8 and 9, you'll see the Nez Perce tribe featured as one of the 2 examples around strategic vision, because that MOA with that college flows from the strategic decision that the tribe made to say, we value education, not just in a rhetorical sense, not to say, hey, we're all about education, but actually doing something about it. And this is how we're going to do something about it. We're going to create this MOA with the tribal college, and not to say, hey, bring the college to the res, but we also want you to offer degrees that we have deemed to be priorities to creating the kind of workforce that we need to preserve our culture, to preserve our lifeways for the future generations. So that's what those 2 leading examples feature. And as you'll notice, in each of those snapshots, as we call them, the snapshot summaries, there's a what we call a connect, which is here's K7's contact information. Here's Kim Carroll's contact information. You can reach out to them directly and learn more. You can ask them questions that relate to what you're trying to learn, that get you the answers that you need, so you can get a deeper sense of the mechanics of how did they develop this program, how did they make this change. And then there's what we call a learning link. And so with Taisha's help, what we've done is we've created a list of related resources that enable you to go and learn a little bit more about how this particular tribe dealt with this particular issue, this particular aspect of workforce development. And then finally, policy recommendations. And again, these are sort of big picture policy recommendations. They're not down to the nitty-gritty of the day-to-day operations of how you run a particular workforce development program. They're really meant to be sort of foundational policy recommendations about things you need to be thinking about as you engage this particular aspect of workforce development. And what we've done through our online resource center, and I'll be providing you the URLs listed in the toolkit itself, and we'll be sharing that out here at the end of the session. But we've created this online resource center, again, to give you the opportunity to learn more. But one of the things we've done is you have the ability to download the individual 2-page spreads. So say, for instance, you're feeling like your tribe's pretty strong when it comes to workforce development, but after reading this toolkit, you think, partnerships were kind of weak in that area. We need to do more in this area. So let's print that out for all of our staff. We'll get together during the lunch session and we'll start hammering through these questions, which are designed to really get you to assess your own situation. And let's identify, here's where we really need to explore new partnerships. Are there ways that we can leverage partnerships to sort of defray some of the costs that we see associated with creating the workforce development approach that we really want? Can we do some of that through partnerships? Can we leverage some of the talent that's there at tribal colleges and universities that they're willing to donate in kind to our effort? So we have that. You can go and download any of those individual PDFs, print them out for your team, and begin to hammer through some of these. And we're gonna show you. We're gonna give you copies of some of those as we go through the small group exercise. We also have, like I said, you can go to Online Resource Center and access more information about all of the tribes that are featured in the toolkit. And then as we move forward, we're going to be adding more and more to this resource center. So for each of the 15 strategic considerations, we're going to be adding additional resources that you can access, studies, things like that. So for a good example of this is one of the 15 strategic considerations is called assessment. And really what that's about is data, information. Do you have the data and information you need to make informed decisions about how you want to develop your people, right? And is your approach working? As engaging in that longitudinal analysis to figure out, are the programs that we've developed and implemented in order to improve our people, are they actually achieving the desired goals that we have, right? And so there you'll get a sense of what some tribes are doing, but you also get a sense of what some of the challenges are. So for instance, Norm DeWeaver has been one of the leading authorities on trying to bring some much needed light to the shortcomings of federal data when it comes to Indian country unemployment, right? The fact that in many tribal communities there's this invisible demographic there, right? There are people that want to work, but they're not looking for work because for so long there hasn't been work available, right? So if the federal government is not accounting for those people, how is the tribe accounting for those people? And how are some other tribes doing that work? And how can you as a tribe learn from those other tribes? So we'll be continuing to build this out. We don't pretend to know all the answers here, so we invite all of you. If you're doing something innovative, if you know of a tribe that's doing something innovative, if you've come across a study that you feel can contribute to the knowledge among all of us, please send it our way and we'll add it. This is a living resource that we intend to grow over time. And as I mentioned, 4 other case studies, and then also the policy brief. And with that, I wanted to turn back to our panelists. I gave them the opportunity to go through the toolkit ahead of time, and I said, we're going to have a section of this agenda where we allow you each to choose one of the 15 considerations and speak about it in depth and really give your perspectives on, what are the inherent challenges with this area? How do you see, where do you see innovative strategies really making a difference, whether in your own tribe or other tribes? And then sort of just helping us to frame that consideration for folks. And so with that, we're going to start with Kim. Kim selected integration, I believe, right?
Is this on now? It is on now. Actually, I selected 4 different ones. and really, I need to stand up. I'm sorry, I can't sit for too long. I'm at that age. I get too stiff. And actually, I think the reason for that is because they all do work together. One thing about this toolkit, I don't think you can take any one of these 15. It's not a silo. You have to address all of the different areas. With integration, I did mention some of the ways that we have integrated the programs that we have at Cherokee Nation, certainly in the employment training realm, in career services, with the cross-training of staff and the common intake form, the common application, the common processes and policies that we use in our department. Some of the issues that you're going to run into, that certainly we've run into, particularly when you're talking about integration, is possessiveness, I guess you might say. People have their programs. This is my program, this is my funding, this is how we do this. And sometimes the change, it's hard. It's hard to let go. It's hard to let other people in. They don't always see the advantage to their program in being able to share. And we do play nice together. I'm not saying we don't. But still, this is ours. This is mine. I know this. I don't know what you're doing. And these are things that take time to overcome. A real good example, and she's not here, so I'm going to say this, in our area is our Vocational Rehabilitation program. I don't know if any of the rest of you have ever experienced this or not. They're in our department, but they're separate. And from everything I can see, they're going to stay separate. From the top on down, it's not just the people within our department. I mean, I think that they would be willing to work more closely with us. But every bit of information that they receive from their organizations, from their funding source, and apparently they have like a strategic planning group of some sort, a task force, I guess. The message is very strong. Do not integrate. Do not put vocational rehabilitation in 477. They have, one of the things that I'm over in my role as Director of Grants and Compliance is the Central Records Office. We have all of our participant case files are in one central location where they're kept under lock and key, certainly, for confidentiality. I'm also over data entry. I do the reporting for all of our programs, as well as the grant writing, and then making sure that the participant files are in compliance with federal and tribal regulations, laws, etc., policies and procedures, except for vocational rehabilitation. They have their own file room. They do their own reporting. When I'm doing a report, on our department. I have to go to them for their information. Everything else I can pull up myself, but I have to depend on them to give me that information. So these are some issues, and I'm sure they're not the only one. There are other programs I'm sure that you have within your tribe that getting information from them or working jointly with them is kind of like pulling teeth, maybe. Change is hard. It's hard for everyone. But that's something you need to be aware of when you start looking at integrating programs, I think. How can we make this easier for everyone? And I think that once people understand the advantage to their program and to the people that they work with, they're a lot more open to the ideal. One of the things that we have done, well, there are several things that we have done to try to ease this. Some of the grants that we've gone after, and that's one thing, we're very aggressive at going at federal funds whenever possible. And one of the things that we want to do with those is not just have a standalone program, but have something that is sustainable. Something that we can build on, or that builds on something we've been doing in the past. And a good example of that is with our reentry program. We have not been successful at federal funding for reentry. One of the reasons is because we don't do evidence-based practices. I don't know what those are. So the last grant we wrote was a planning grant, and where we admitted, we have this program, we've been doing this for 5-6 years, we've been successful at it, but we know we can do better. And so what we proposed to do and what we were funded to do was to develop a task force, to develop a short-term and long-term strategic plan for reintegration, to receive training in evidence-based practices for the staff that we have there, to develop resources and partnerships throughout the community so that we have those and that we are better partners with corrections agencies, probation, parole, all of those types of things. Another good example is with vocational rehabilitation. We were fortunate enough to receive funding for a disability employment initiative through the Department of Labor. And the whole purpose of that is to train workforce staff to work with individuals who have disabilities. And we've gotten our vocational rehabilitation program personnel involved in that. They started it off as a standalone program. No, that's not what it is. All of these individuals are, of course, eligible for all the programs that we operate. They're certainly eligible for WOIA, they're certainly WIOA, as well as our BIA programs, any of our 477 programs. They're not just voc rehab clients. And so what we want to do is train all of our staff to work with these individuals as well, instead of just referring them to voc rehab. And this is a way I hope that we will be able to pull voc rehab into the mix, into the integration that we have within career services. It will make all of us stronger. We can share resources, we can share knowledge, and provide better services for the individuals that we're here to serve.
Before I move on to Kay, I wanted to pull one thread on what you were sharing, and that is, I think what we've heard so far is that, the main impetus for 477, aside from the fact that it helps ease the administrative reporting burdens and all the time and energy and needless time and energy that's involved with that, is it makes more sense to the tribe, because the tribe is trying to help its people in a comprehensive, holistic fashion. But that said, that integration can take many different forms. There's integration on paper, a la 477, in sort of a formal legal sense or a formal policy sense, right? But then there's also, in a practical sense, is building the relationships between programs. It may not be that, tribal voc rehab is part of 477 or part of that formal unified approach. But in practice, it sounds like you're trying to build towards that gradually. And it takes sustained effort. It takes sustained relationship building between, the key department heads and program managers that are involved with these various programs, that some of whom may have been in that silo, as you said, for a very, very long time. And it's sort of, to me, it takes a commitment to finding a new and better way, a more effective way of working together. So with that, we're going to turn to Kay, and Kay chose targeted solutions. And it was interesting, Jennifer Racho from Northwest area who's with us today, we were having a conversation earlier today, and if you turn to the targeted solutions section, which is on page 26 and 27, I was telling her, I was like, we were toying with actually having a separate section called Starting Young out of this because we are seeing such an amazing number of tribes doing some extraordinary things when it comes to getting their youth exposed to workforce, instilling work ethic in them at a young age, exposing them to the professional environment. And I think that's one of the things we see as sort of our next stage of work in this area, is really starting to document what the different tribes are doing when it comes to youth. But I wanted to turn over to Kay to talk about how she sees this task of making sure that your workforce development efforts are really targeted to meeting the particular demographics that you're trying to serve in your community. So, okay?
All right. Before I did that, I wanted to mention with Kim, for tribes, we need to get together and de-ice this deep freeze over the U.S. Department of Education and its programs. We need to make integration of their programs work in our tribal plans. So make that a strategy, a solution. Let's find the strategic solution through your document. But I chose targeted solutions. The one thing I like about the document is there's so many questions to offer tribal leaders, tribal managers, even your planners to ask questions. How are we going to answer these questions and provide policy program recommendations? So the one I saw that caught my eye is, how is your nation partnering to develop specialized curricula geared toward a particular field of need? Well, for the Nez Perce tribe, one of our largest departments next to early childhood development is our natural resources department. Our technicians, professionals that work in tribal fisheries, forestry, farm management, you name it, anything under natural resources. One thing we hear at our tribal council endlessly for years, for decades, is why is it that we see non-native professionals working in our jobs? How come we're not working in those jobs? Well, the answer is there's a need for more education and training. So the tribal college helps with that. We have Northwest Indian College offering the associate and bachelor's degrees in tribal native environmental science, and we're starting to see graduates. I was just talking to a 2018 graduate the other day because we help with getting them to their graduation on the main campus at Lemmy Nation. So what do you do? Do you work in natural resources? Yes, I work in fisheries. I've just realized that I need an education in order to move up. I'm only a Tech 2. I want to climb up to be a Tech 3, Tech 4, but I need more education, more training. So I came to Northwest Indian College. I think it's exciting. He says, and I'm noticing our younger kids that are coming in that, I'll have to compete with because they're going to start moving up faster than I can manage with my full-time job, my family, and then education. But the thing that I like about this statement here shows what we're doing. I like when we go after research-based solutions, like Kim was saying that they did that for their strategy too, is that because we belong to a regional Workforce Development Council, we're not mandated by the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act to have a local workforce investment board. We're totally volunteer. We knew we were no longer mandated or unfunded to do this since 2007. We realized we couldn't continue our work unfunded, or we need to continue our work whether we're funded or not. There's so many things we need to do to keep our children in our region to work. We have high occupations for labor in industries, and we need to keep them here, show them why we keep them here. So because of that relationship and me getting to know people from around the state, it was really cool. Our University of Idaho STEM education director was formerly with Idaho National Education Laboratory doing statewide work on education and through Rural Development Council work. And So she called one day, she goes, Kay, there's a really nice grant application out under the National Science Foundation. It's under the initiative called Innovative Teaching Experiences for Students and Teachers. We have a PhD that is really doing good work in STEM identity. We want to do a project like this with Native children on your reservation. So that started the planning stage. It was really cool because we worked on it for like the grant application for 3 months, and we were funded like probably a whole year later. We're in the second year of a project called Building STEM Identity of Native Students using unmanned aerial vehicles and remote sensing technologies. This project is about preparing high school students for careers in fisheries, forestry, and fire management. When we were working on the project application, I asked, can we please bring in Dr. Raymond Dixon with the College of Education? He is becoming known in the state of Idaho for his developing curriculum research projects or studies, or otherwise known as DACUM studies. So Dr. Dixon had done some work in our manufacturing, and there's some really great manufacturing projects in place funded by the National Science Foundation for high school students right now. So I wanted Dr. Dixon because of his work there. So we brought him on, and he did a DACUM study with our tribal professionals, technicians, to develop curriculum that we're now using in the high school for the second year of our project with high school students. We have we have summer camp. Last summer it was for 1 week. This year it's going to be 2 weeks. We're even working through the 4th of July this year, and that we just learned that we have money to do a 3rd year camp. I'm really excited about this project because it's really helping students understand that they're learning on their own that we know about a science that doesn't have a label. It's traditional science. It's things that we know about our life way, our cultural ways with how we understand our plants, our animals, our environment, so that they learn that they can be scientists because of these things they know. So I'm really excited about the project because recently we just discovered how we're going to use what they call skill stacking or badging credentials. If you go to, Idaho has a idahoskillsstack.org website. I love it because the website is geared toward those who are the educator. Those are who are the students who are pursuing a badge, or to the instructor who's offering a badge. But with badges, what we'll do with this DACUM study is begin to identify duties and tasks and build a badge over, like maybe for a fisheries technician, knowing how to use fishery tools, knowing how to do forestry tools, and they'll get a badge for knowing that one skill that's required in the class description of their job. We're learning how to build secondary badges for high school students. At our tribe, we have a need to build post-secondary badges for adults who have been technicians for 5, 10, 15, some 30, some 40 years, and have never gone to school. So this is our new way in North Central Idaho through Lewis Clark State College of building badges that eventually will be equivalent to career technical education credits that could lead to some degree program at Lewis Clark State College. So we're building these stepping stones of education and training, starting by badges. What's cool about working about badges, we were working with the Idaho Career Technical Education office out of Boise, and they said, you know, you're the first tribe to make a contact about doing this. And also, you're working with a university that's not even a landing institution for skill stacking. The only school in Idaho is the University of Idaho. Can you believe that? But so that's really cool that we're working with the University of Idaho, where we have in the provost office a tribal liaison. Also in our project this summer for camp, our students are going to earn 3 credits, dual credit hours. 1 credit in forestry, 1 credit in fisheries, and 1 credit in environmental science, using the 102 designation for field experiences. So I love targeted solutions. We're doing something where we're building our workforce for our natural resources starting at the high school level. Thank you.
So one Yeah, you go ahead and give it to Erwin. And I wanted to highlight one thing that you shared. What you call skill stacking or badge stacking, I've heard elsewhere described as stackable credentials. For those of you who don't know, and this is one of the case studies that we developed, the in-depth case studies, the Gila River Indian Community in Arizona was the first tribe to receive a Career Pathways grant from the Department of Labor, which had a very involved planning, strategic planning component for that. In fact, I think it was a 3-year grant. They spent their first 18 months, they weren't implementing, they were just designing. And one of the things they really focused on was the fact that they saw a lot of attrition with their young people trying to go off and get 2- and 4-year degrees, because when these young people, they see the prospect of that is so daunting, it's so overwhelming, and the idea of trying to get a 4-year degree kind of continuously in 4 years, it's a lot. So what they said was they wanted to build in stackable credentials into the curriculum that they were going to design in partnership with the employers that they then wanted to have hire their graduates. And so they wanted to break the educational journey down into these small, digestible, doable pieces. So, the students, the young people can gain that confidence. Hey, I've gotten that badge, I've gotten that skill, I'm getting there, I can keep going. So they're seeing these sort of smaller steps they're taking and building it up incrementally. And also that helps to account for, unforeseen circumstances, life events that take place where you have to take a pause from that educational journey, and you can then continue it, and you won't have lost the progress that you've already made because it's already accounted for. And so that sort of issue is also documented here, and solutions are documented here around that issue as well. So, yes.
Oh, one thing I forgot to mention is, with our unmanned aerial vehicles, we're talking about drones. The Lapwai High School or Lapwai School District Superintendent in a newsletter like in October says our school district has drone fever. The after-school program has drones. The middle school has drones, and the middle school students took an online course with Boise State University. Our high school students have drones, but 2 of our students are earning their pilot's license because at camp this year they'll be flying drones on the Payette National Forest when we do field studies with our forestry and fisheries curriculum. So I just had to throw that one in too. Thank you.
So, Erwin?
All right, thank you. Kind of like I want to chime off what Kim said earlier. This toolkit is so diverse and so dynamic and works so much together with each aspect that even though we're all talking about different parts of this, it's all really almost the same thing of partnering, working together, advancing our people. And that's just what I have to chime in on. But it's just, I'm going to go over the advancement section, which through like how he presented earlier about how it's broken down, the 4 questions and the 4 key points on this part was about tribal career ladders, as well as expectations and standards for advancement, the establishment of funding for, basically having the committed employees, for training, as well as diffusing the crab in the bucket dynamic, which I know a lot of us in Indian country have experienced. I myself have experienced it of. But the thought is we want to go ahead and assess, my program alone, ETA, can't do everything I'd like it to do. We talked about the partnerships with 477, so my tribe has developed a Department of Labor for itself, including the ETA, our vocational rehab, adult education services, and also our Office of Veterans Affairs. With the Department of Labor's Workforce Innovation Opportunities Act, veterans have priority with that program. And so with that thought, they have their own type of career services, but we network with them in most cases to increase that type of, if we partner together, it's a better win-win for the veterans. But the thought is, having this advancement with our tribe, or with this tribe in particular, with my people, there hasn't been an established personnel policies that's within relevancy. Right now, our policies are so outdated. We're working towards creating new policy, and that's what this Department of Labor will do, is to help us create policy as well as procedures to address this issue for advancement. So we do get individuals that are advancing with the skills, with what's in demand, where are we lacking in areas. So with that thought, we will develop a HR inventory assessment within ourselves. It will be contracted outside the tribe. I personally don't want to sit on any kind of committees where we're scrutinizing our people. So And the thought is, to take it against them, make them do an inventory of themselves with their job description, as well as keeping a journal of sorts on what they do on a daily. And this will be a tool for us to assess them, determine where areas they may be lacking in regards to their job description, or even if their job description is even relevant anymore. It may need to be changed. We may need to reorganize. These are things that, it sounds scary because it's change, and I understand that, and the thought is, we want to advance in a positive way, so it just involves having us to look at ourselves, where we're at right now, as well as determine, what standards do we want to have for the future? Where do we want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years? And this is just, like you said, strategic planning, assessments, partnering. No one program can do this alone. The whole tribe in itself has to work together. And I feel that this toolkit is a wonderful tool for us to use, as well as even just sitting here listening to everybody today. I'm seeing more things, or learning about more opportunities, for the youth, and drone technology. I was actually at a Carroll conference a few months ago, and they were saying that this will be involved in so many different aspects when it comes to maintenance, medical field. It's not just flying things around or delivering things to people. There's going to be, there's just so many opportunities with it. And I believe it is, Washington State, right, or Oregon, that's having Warm Springs. Warm Springs is, I guess one of the front lines in this thought. But getting off track here. But going back to the assessments and stuff, we get people trained in areas that, either they're, I don't want to say obsolete, but maybe this job description isn't what it should be anymore. Maybe we need to design something else. I was at our state conference, and they were talking to us about, with leaders, us being leaders, and working with our tribes, we're going to have to determine what type of careers are going to be out there. There's some that are going to be needed that we haven't even thought of yet. When we think about this thing, we got to think about what happened in the past. Right now, has anybody thought about the old telephone operator? Sit there with the switchboard and that's, no one even thinks about a job like that. But back in the day, that was in demand. There's people that needed to do that. Now we got computers that do this. So now we got to have a person that can fix the computer that in turn turns, the switches for the phones and everything. But getting to the thought is, we're going to have to design these concepts, these new jobs for the new people that are going to come in. Because right now, we're getting by with what we have, but we want to make sure that we're going in an area for the future, as well as being stable, or our stability at the present moment. And like I said, this toolkit, it just feels like it has every thought on working together, partnering, as well as even considering, new thoughts from other areas. If there's a wheel rolling around out there and it's working right, I want to grab it and run with it. I don't want to have to create a new wheel when there's one already out there. So, all right, I think I'm about at time. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Erwin. It's interesting you brought up the issue of policies and HR policies, and one of the examples we have there, it's actually in the institutions section, is on Pueblo Laguna, who's actually represented here today. They overhauled, the first thing they launched their Workforce Excellence Initiative, which really stated in explicit terms the workforce values that they wanted to drive their workforce development activities. And in partnership with that, they then, I think it was a year later, they overhauled their HR policies and procedures, because under the old way, and tell me if anyone thinks this is familiar to them, the elected leadership was involved in the personal hiring and firing and all that kind of stuff, and merit decisions, and merit-based advancement decisions and that sort of thing. And aside from the fact that does not lend itself well to fairness and consistency across the board, because it's a very subjective process, think about the amount of time that your elected leadership is spending on those sorts of issues that should ideally be done by somebody else, and the liberating dynamic that brings when you then create a policy and procedure around HR that insulates your elected leadership from that, because it frees them up to really focus on these big picture questions that are contained in this toolkit, right? Where are we trying to take this nation 25 years from now, 50 years from now? What does that mean for the decisions we make today? How do we use those, long-term strategic priorities as a basis for decision making? They have more time to engage those difficult questions and come up with sort of the grand design that then the programmatic people like the three folks sitting up here can then implement. And that's really where you see in a number of places really in the toolkit the nation building research come in, where you've really got to have these capable governing institutions that are fairly and consistently enforced, fairly and consistently administrated, and that everyone is playing the valued role that they're ideally suited to play, right? So you don't want, for instance, your elected leadership, engaging in day-to-day administration of your WIOA program, right? That tends to have some pretty negative effects. What you do want is your elected leadership, for instance, giving clear direction. Big picture, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, what are our benchmarks? What do we want to be? We've identified as a tribe that we want to get into unmanned drone technology, or we want to get into some of these medical fields that are going to be in high in demand, given the baby boomers that are going to be going into retirement, et cetera. You need to make that happen. You program people need to make that happen. Figure it out. So that's another thing that we touch on in this toolkit.